Alpha Media, Mankato. Spence, good morning. And joining me out at a lake, I'm kind of jealous, is Minnesota DNR officer Chris Howe. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you.
Well, it looks like a gorgeous day to be out on a lake, or I guess in your case, working today.
It is. It's a beautiful day out. Moderate temperature and a nice breeze to help keep the bugs off, but it's just about a perfect day.
Well, pleasure to talk with you. And let's go over some of the new things. Maybe people haven't been out to the lake yet. We had kind of a weird spring. We've had all the COVID stuff. Maybe they haven't been out and gotten the boat out, got fishing yet. But let's go through some of the things that are new that people need to be aware of as they get out and enjoy the outdoors in Minnesota this summer. Maybe we want to start with boating, perhaps, here.
Yeah, you bet. We don't have a lot that's new on the boating front this year as far as legal requirements go. There are some changes related to carbon monoxide detectors on some boats. And there are some changes related to if you've had a conviction for operating a motor vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. Your privileges can be revoked for other vehicles as well. Like traditionally, we don't need to have a driver's license for a boat, but if you're under, if your driver's license is suspended for an alcohol violation, your boating privileges will also be suspended. You can read about that information in the Minnesota Boating Guide, which is our regulation guide, or you can Google Little Allen's Law, ALLAN''S, and that'll give you more information on that.
Well, tell me about, okay, one thing I screwed up on, and I should have read that. It was, I was coming to the lake, and I had the plug in my boat already, and one of the inspectors was like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should have that plug out as you come into the lake and as you leave the lake. So that was one thing that I was screwing up on, and you can get fined for that, correct?
That is correct. We have quite a bit of aquatic invasive species information, or as we refer to it as AIS, in the fishing regulations. It's on pages 8 to 11. One of the common violations is like you're speaking of, is transporting watercraft or water-related equipment with a plug in place. For practical purposes, you're going to be taking the plug out before you leave the public water access. And anytime you're transporting that watercraft, it needs to remain out. So for practical purposes, pull the plug before you leave the access, and don't put the plug back in until you are at the access next time you're going to use the boat. We hear a lot of folks that they'll say, well, I put it in right before I left home because I don't want to forget it. And I always joke with people that if you forget to put your plug in, you probably only forget that once. But
I hope so. I hope so, Chris.
It's just a different way of doing business than the way some of us grew up. But it's been law since the July 1st of 2010. So, we're sneaking up on 10 years here in a few weeks. So it's not a new law.
Well, duly noted. And I know you guys have lots of inspectors out as well at lots of the landings around in southern Minnesota.
Yeah, there are state watercraft inspectors. Some of the counties have gotten grants to have their own inspectors. I can think, I don't know if they're doing it this year, but in years past, the city of Elysian had hired a watercraft inspector and had them at the east access to Lake Francis. So you might find an inspector representing any number of agencies. You might find them at any given boat access. Obviously, they tend to focus on the popular ones. But the things they're looking for are all of those things that are on pages 8 to 11 of the fishing regs. Basically, it can be summed up in the 3 words, clean, drain, dry. You need to clean off all the weeds from your boat, motor, trailer, etc. Whether you're leaving the lake or going to the lake. Ideally, you don't have anything on your boat while it's at home, but it never hurts to take a second look. But basically, we're asking folks, when you leave the lake, pull off all of those weeds. Places that people sometimes overlook are rollers on their trailers.
Yep.
Is a real common one, or the leaf springs on your trailer. And it's very often the things that we find are the things that are not easy to pick off. The people pick the weeds off their prop, but they don't bend over and look at the rollers, perhaps. Maybe you look at the rollers and if you have a wide boat, way under the boat, there might be some weeds dangling. And, you can use a stick, or you can use any kind of a grabber device like you might use to grab a can off the top shelf or something. People have those gadgets at home sometimes, but we really need to work on preventing the spread, because that's the basic tool we have in our arsenal. Once those, take milfoil, for instance, once that appears in a lake, as of now, we've got no way to get it out. And I don't expect that there will be a way anytime soon. So we want to keep our lakes in the best condition possible.
Well, tell me about life jackets too. What's the rule on kids in boats and life jackets?
For any watercraft, you need to have one wearable life jacket per person of an appropriate size. For motorized boats 16 feet or longer, you need to have one wearable per person, plus one Type 4 Coast Guard personal flotation device. That's like a throwable device. Most commonly, it's a flotation seat cushion with a Coast Guard approved label. Sometimes you'll see the ring buoys, but the seat cushions are by far the most common, most popular. And the idea there is that if you have someone in the water, you can toss that to them like a frisbee. To try to toss a life jacket to somebody who has fallen in the water, if you got to go more than a few feet, those life jackets don't throw very well. But those flotation cushions do throw well. As far as young folks go, if a person is under 10 and they're on the watercraft, they have to have that life jacket on. They have to be wearing their life jacket. Okay. There are very few exceptions, such as if you're tied up to a dock, or if they're below decks, like in a cabin cruiser, or if they're actively swimming, actively jumping off, say off the pontoon into the lake. But for practical purposes, if they're under 10 and they're out on the water, they're going to need to be wearing that life jacket.
Well, very good. Thank you so much for your time. Looks like you're enjoying a beautiful day. And again, thank you for all your time this morning and kind of updating us on some things as we get out and spending a little more time outdoors and boating outings and things like that here in Minnesota.
Well, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure, Spence.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We'll do